staff has been making phone calls. My staff has been making phone calls on something all day, and it's a big mystery. We haven't been able to track anything down yet. It's a big violation of our Constitution. The Army has now launched an inquiry into who gave orders to send troops to patrol an Alabama city after a shooting spree that left 11 people dead last week. The military assumed the role of a police in Sampson, Alabama. We called the governor's office. The governor said, excuse me? They had no idea in the governor's office who sold the soldiers. We're not talking about National Guard. We're talking about U.S. Army. It is a story you're not seeing anywhere else. Fox News legal analyst Peter Johnson joins me now. Okay, Peter, in a nutshell, because I think a lot of people are going to look at this story and they're going to say, okay, so the soldiers were there. It's a small town. They didn't have enough police. You didn't know what was going on. You know, so what? They're helping out a little bit. What's the problem with this?
You know, unless it's a science fiction movie, it's absolutely illegal. And as you point out, it violates everything we stand for in this country. There's an act called the Posse Comitatus Act, goes back to 1878, says that the military should not be involved with civilian law enforcement. And if you do it, you can be prosecuted for it.
Okay.
It's illegal.
Why is that law there?
The law is there post-Reconstruction. Post-Civil War, President Hayes signed the law, really as a compromise between the North and the South, the Democrats and the Republicans, to say that we're going to pull troops out of the South and we're going to allow law enforcement to be done by the civilian population.
Okay, and it was done because of why? What was the problem?
Well, the problem is a political one. After the Civil War, there were efforts made to ensure that freed slaves were assured certain constitutional rights that they may not have been afforded if there hadn't been protection. But at some point it was believed that it was not necessary to have a military force. What we're talking about in Sampson, Alabama is 10 or 11 people being killed, being murdered, and for some reason that no one knows, the military troops, 22 MPs and others, rushed into that environment for God knows what. Now, to say that's a slippery slope is an understatement. Next, are we going to have troops coming from Camp Smith in upstate New York to help Ray Kelly in the New York City Police Department? Are they going to come from Fort Dix, New Jersey, to help reduce the crime rate in Newark?
Okay, we called the governor.
Yeah.
The governor's office. Do we have an exact quote on the screen from the governor or not? The governor's office said, well, we have no idea. There it is. The purpose for sending military police, the authority for doing so, this is the Army. And what duties they performed is subject of an ongoing commander's inquiry. This inquiry will also consider whether law, regulation, and policy were followed. Until those facts are determined, it would be inappropriate to speculate or comment further. Okay, that was the U.S. Army. We called the governor's office. They said we don't have any idea. The governor didn't do it. We called the White House. They declined to answer. Is that the way to, don't read more into that than just that. They just didn't give an answer. That was the White House. The Justice Department, we called and they said, oh, this is such a silly story. Nobody even matters about it. Nothing matters.
Do you know why? Because no one's going to be prosecuted, even if this has been violated. It carries a 2-year prison term, and no one has ever been prosecuted. And little by little, the Congress has whittled away at it. There are about 25 or 27 exceptions now.
Wasn't Joe Biden, didn't he play a role after Oklahoma City and saying we need to have soldiers on the streets?
Glenn, you're always dead on. He was saying we need to modify the Posse Comitatus Act. Maybe we should have some role for the military based on the terroristic act that happened in Oklahoma City. And this happens every time there's a terroristic act, every time there's an act of violence. The federal government often comes in and says, listen, we need to have the military involved more. They do have a role. They have a role in natural disasters. They have a role in nuclear attack. They have a role in chemical and biological warfare. They don't have a role on their own to go off their military base and say there's a civil matter involving homicides that we should get involved with.
We have, for the very first time in American history, we have a standing battalion that it has been trained. It started in August. I read about it in Stars and Stripes. It's one of the only places that I've seen it. A standing battalion in Maryland. Now, they say that this is just September 11th stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the first. I mean, we're doing a lot of firsts here, are we not?
Well, we're doing more and more, and the slope is getting greasier and slippier and steeper in terms of bringing the military into our daily life. We've seen it at the border. There's talk about seeing it more at the Mexican border. We saw it after September 11th. And there were efforts to resist the militarization of the policing of this country. This is a frightening episode. I'm not saying it's being sanctioned by the government, but obviously it was sanctioned by a commanding military officer who sent those troops in. That's wrong.
We just need an answer on that. Okay. Thank you very much, Peter.